Okay, I'm on page 77. When to use what agreement and when to get it signed. I put this in here because we have so many questions about this. Well, what agreement do I use and when do I use it? You have questions about that? Is this something you want to know? Okay, it's right in here in the book for you. All right, there's two phases. You're buying and you're selling. You're buying and you're selling. You're buying means you're either leasing it, or you're owner financing it, or you're paying cash for it, or you're optioning it. When you're selling, it means you're either lease optioning it, selling it with owner financing, or selling it to a cash buyer. And that is it. There's nothing in between. There's only three exit strategies. Sell with owner financing, lease purchase to a tenant buyer, or sell to a qualified buyer, or of course move into it, and that's not an exit strategy, that's just a temporary delay. There's only three exit strategies. And knowing that, it does make the contracting a little simpler. But again, what you guys got to quit worrying about is the agreements, because all you have to think about is, what is my intent? What is my oral agreement here with the other side? And then put it down in writing the best you can. You are not attorneys. You're not trained on using legalese. So you're going to write in plain old simple language, and you're just going to write it down the best way you can write it. And that's why your attorneys are going to fix it if they don't like it. If your attorney doesn't like something in your agreement, he will change it at closing and get the other side to initial it. If it's something that could cause a problem, he'll recognize it and make you aware of it. And frankly, the only time something could cause you a problem is if the other side disputes this transaction and wants to get into a battle with you anyway. If you run your business the way I'd like to see you run your business, that's never going to happen, because we're going to run our business so that we don't have to fight with people. Frankly, if they want their house back, I'd rather give them their house back than go to court with them. If my tenant buyer wants their deposit back, I'm going to go to court with them, because I'm not going to give them their deposit back after they've been in the house. I've had a couple here recently moved out of the house and thought they were getting their deposit back. It didn't take them long to figure out that wasn't true. Can't blame them for trying, though, can you? Somebody gives you a $10,000 deposit, can you blame them for trying? No. But they're not going to try very long before they're realizing they're approaching a dead-end battle, and that's all because of the agreements. In fact, we just had a few months ago, last year, we lease optioned a property on the west side. It was only an $85,000 house that I bought at an auction for $30,000. I put a tenant buyer in it, and they gave me $15,000 non-refundable deposit on an $85,000 house. Okay. He lived in that house maybe 7 months. And then I think he lost his job and he had to move. And he called us. And he said, listen, I can't afford the house anymore. I lost my job. He says, can I get my deposit back? And we said, no, you can't. You know that. You knew that before you called, didn't you? He said, well, yes, but I thought I'd try. So finally I agreed. But if you'll move out of the house and leave it clean and let us know, we'll come visit it. And if it is clean and you're out of it, we'll give you $1,000 of your deposit back so you can move. He says, well, I told him I'll give him $1,500 of a deposit back. That's what we finally agreed upon. He says, well, I'll take that offer, except that I don't have the money to move. I said, well, all right. Ain't this a fine pickle I'm in? So I said, here's what I'll do. You can come in and sign a little agreement that you'll accept the $1,500 for the full settlement of your deposit, and I'll give you $500 now, and then as soon as you're out and the place is clean, I'll give you the balance. Now, was that taking a $500 risk? Oh, not really, because here's what I know that he didn't know. When somebody gives you $15,000 on an $85,000 purchase price, if he wanted to, he could force me to have to foreclose him out of that property. When you get to the point to where you're collecting about 20% or so of the total purchase price, and you've got that money in your possession, they have rights in most states They can literally force you to foreclose them out because the court will probably rule that they have too much invested to just walk away from. You got to keep that in mind. So I was thrilled to settle with him for $1,500 to avoid any action like that. And I was intent to do whatever I needed to do to get him out peacefully because I did not want to fight him on this because I was afraid I was in a poor position. And to foreclose would have taken months, not to mention about $2,000 worth of legal fees and court costs. Okay, let's start from scratch on page 77. And notice at the top now it's clearly labeled that we are when to use what agreement and when to get signed on acts. So we are referring to acts only. I'm going to go through them here in a minute, but you may or may not want to use a letter of intent. There's one in here. We used it heavily in the front end. We use it very lightly now, and now we only use it when they want to see something in writing before we meet. It is not a requirement by any stretch of imagination. You must get a lease purchase agreement signed by the seller. And the one you're going to get signed by the seller, if you intend to assign it, we're going to discuss this afternoon. We're going to discuss the one in a minute that you intend to get signed because you're staying in it on a sandwich lease. Two totally different agreements. You should get an authorization to release signed so that you or whoever you pass it on to can get any information concerning the mortgage or about the house. You will get a general release signed from the seller. You may not get it signed immediately, but you will get, your attorney needs to get it signed before it's over. And we've been doing that at the time that the buyer closes. The attorney contacts the seller to verify that the seller understands what's going on and gets them to sign whatever else is not signed at that point and that he wants them to sign. The seller's acknowledgement form, if you have not seen that, you're going to love that. I know your attorney's going to love it because it's the CYA letter from hell. It is clear in that they have not been taken advantage of, and very well that might be what saves your bacon if anybody ever wants to sue you right there. We'll cover that. So when I'm buying, those are the things that I want signed. But I'm not buying. I'm leasing with the option to buy on an axe deal. I know I'm going to assign it. I know I'm not staying in it. Is everybody clear on that? Okay? Now when I'm selling that same deal, it's real easy. All I need to get signed is an assignment of that lease and a general release from my buyer and anything else above from the seller that hasn't been signed at that time. Now, when the buyer is signing all of this stuff, where are they signing it? In front of the attorney. I want the buyer in front of the attorney. I don't want it done by mail. I want the buyer to physically go to the attorney's office, sit in the attorney's office, look him or her in the face, have him or her explain to them a situation, put the documents out in front of them, get them to sign them physically. Nothing done by mail or email. And sometimes you're going to get an opportunity where they want to do it that way. No. If they're going to live in a house in your city, then there's no reason they can't go to an attorney in your city to sign this stuff. All right. On a sandwich lease, on the next page now, a letter of intent if you choose, the lease option agreement that we're about to go over, and the notice of real estate option, which is a device you're going to record to protect your interest, and the CYA letter designed for this type of transaction, which we're about to get to. You can get all of those things signed in the home if you want. By the way, if they will sign your lease option agreement, they will sign the rest of that stuff without an issue. If you don't get all of it signed in the home, you need to get all of it signed before the buyer's closing is finished. And then when you're selling, all you need to get signed is the real property possession and lease agreement. And where's that signed? In front of your attorney. In front of your attorney. An option is real simple. I get an option agreement signed by the seller, and if I want to, I can get a notice of real estate option agreement. I don't, because frankly, I don't lay awake at night worrying about the seller screwing me. Remember, I'm only optioning it for 3 months to begin with, and I've never had a situation where the seller tried to go behind my back and sell the house without telling me about it when I have it under contract. I just don't worry about it. And if that were to happen, I still have all the legal rights that I have within the option agreement. I can hold them accountable. I can sue the seller and the buyer. I can sue the title company that issued the buyer title insurance. I mean, I could have a blast if the seller tries to screw me out of the deal. I don't worry about it. Of course, I don't worry about litigation either, because litigation is a business tool. It's not something to be feared. It's something that you use when you need to use it, because it's certainly going to be used against you sometime during your career. So you might as well get used to the fact that this is a litigious society we're in. So I don't use it unless somebody does me wrong and I can't get it fixed without, nobody wants to go hire attorneys, but they got to eat too. So I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid of somebody jerking me around if I have a contract with them. I mean, it could get really ugly for them. If they sign an option agreement with you and then they go sell it behind your back, it could get really ugly for them. I mean, they could, depending on what state you're in, it might even be subject to punitive damages, which sometimes is 3 times what the judge says the award is. So, I don't worry about stuff like that. If you do, because you're an analytical personality, then you're going to want to get that notice of real estate option agreement signed and get it recorded. Then they ain't selling behind your back. Okay, when I'm selling on an option, then all I need is a purchase and sale agreement from my buyer. And you got 2 choices here. If it's a cash buyer, then there's no bank involved. I may just want to assign it to my buyer, but I got to tell you, that means your buyer is fully aware of how much money you're making. And that may not be to your advantage. That may not be to your advantage. So if you're making a bunch of money on this deal, my arrangement with the seller is that you're going to sell it for whatever price I sell it for. The HUD one's going to go from you to the buyer. You're going to get what we agreed. And on the HUD one is going to be a check to me for the difference. And I'm going to tell you how I handle that. I use one of my entities, and I ask the closing agent to write that up as a payoff of a mortgage. For example, let's say you make $100,000 on the house. Don't write it up for 100. Write it up at $99,984.50. So it looks like a payoff on a mortgage. And let's say your corporation is ABC Corp. I just have the closing agent put right on the HUD one, mortgage payoff ABC Corp. $99,984.50. You guys make sense? Hello? Okay, so ABC Corp gets a check for that amount. Are you sure that makes sense? Why don't I write it up as a commission? I don't have a license. Am I doing anything illegal? It sure seems illegal, doesn't it? There's nothing illegal about this. I have an option. I have every right to sell that house because I have it under control. I have every right. And if you think there's something wrong with assigning a contract, all we're doing is kind of wholesaling. The table you're sitting on, do you think this hotel bought it directly from the manufacturer? No. That table went through at least 2 middlemen before it got to the hotel. Each one of them made money. Well, all the manufacturer did was wholesale it to the wholesaler, and the wholesaler wholesaled it to the next guy. He retailed it to the hotel. That's the same thing you're doing in real estate. There's nothing illegal about it, nothing shaky about it, there's nothing immoral about it, and there's nothing wrong with you getting paid. Incidentally, how do you think the chains like McDonald's and the Wendy's and the Arby's and all of those chains, how do you think they find their, and Walgreens. I happen to know a guy who does this for Walgreens. How do you think they find those locations? Many of them have front-end men that go out and put those locations under contract and then flip them to the company that wants to build on them. With the cooperation of the company, they're flipping them too. And they know the stats that the company requires. They know the requirements for them to even want it. They put it under contract to option it and then let the company decide for sure that they want it. And they get a fee in the middle. Now that fee is semi-controlled, but I can assure you it is 6 figures and sometimes 7 figures for just being in the middle. And that's all they do it. Option it, sell it. And there's a whole world out there that you haven't been exposed to yet. All right.